Hello, everyone, and welcome back to of Bricks and Dragons. Today, I'm going to kind of go a little bit on a rant here, kind of an idea thing. As you know, we've been doing a little bit of Fallout and some Star Trek and um, those kind of role playing games. So this is where I'm going with the Star Trek franchise. Um, Now, whenever we think of Star Trek, we typically think of the Federation, the Klingons, Romulans, Orions, Vulcans, uh, the Jemadar, uh, all of them. And they all have their own ships and everything else. One of the things that we don't typically see, and as far as it goes for doing adventures and everything else, because typically we're thinking of ourselves being in the Federation, or maybe because they have the Klingon handbook. So if you're thinking about it in those regards, here we are. Um, so really, as I'm kind of going through all this, as we have depending on how you want to see it, we have a Raven class here with a Danube shuttle and a Type 6 shuttle here. Um, I know there's, I think it's the Airy class or whatever is another version or another type that they want to call it. Raven was the first ship that we saw, so typically a lot of people will call it the Raven class. Um, what we don't really have a lot of is we don't have a lot of civilian ships. And that's what I was kind of doing here. I was trying to look up civilian ships, and of course, this is on Bing. So as you can laugh at me because I'm still using Bing. I know a lot of people don't. I still do for just the silliness. We have a lot of listing of ships. Um, we have other Federation. This is a model that had been done for a couple different ships. They used it. Actually, I think they used it in the Generations movie. They had two of these for the Lacool. Uh, and it works in a pinch. You can reuse models, repaint them up, and stuff like that. Um, I think that they used this for Cassidy Yates for her ship. So they again reused the model. Um, I think, and it's kind of a plead out there. Running as a Federation crew member or whatever is wonderful, but I think to throw ideas out here as a freelancer, or maybe you're another planet that's making their own ships. Um, to run games off of that. And you could even grab some older Federation ships. So if in my rant here, I'm going to kind of lead this up here to uh, getting onto the Dominion War. If you're another planet that's maybe somewhat aligned with the Federation, but not maybe a member planet yet, or maybe you are a planet that is a member, but you have your own security force to help patrol a certain area or whatever. You might have some older Federation ships. Um, I haven't watched Picard, but I did see in season 3 they had the Elios class, I believe it was, um, starship that Dr. Beverly Crusher was using for her own medical transportation and all that she had gotten. And it had a very small crew, and which is where I'm kind of going with this. I like having ships with small crews because that way, when we're doing things, we don't sit here and say we have this huge crew, we're trying to do this, and I'm trying to do, as a game master, a space battle up in the sky, and then trying to take care of the people on the ground. Um, it keeps things in a smaller perspective, which is what I really find very helpful. And that's another reason why I really gravitate more towards doing a Star Wars small crews and the like. If you're doing a bigger crew and then you're trying to incorporate everything, it can get kind of chaotic. Um, so that's where I'm kind of going with this. Um, you can always grab something. Ooh, that doesn't show up very well. All right, well, let's find a different ship here. You know, whether it's actual Star Trek-ish, I mean, we have old civilian ships like this from the original series. So we still have that same, the two warp nacelles in our in the next generation. When you look at one single nacelle, they're talking about having on the Galaxy class, each nacelle had 24 warp cores. So really, we could make those warp cores small or really big, like what they were. And even in comparison to the original series, um, the warp cores and everything else are very small and compact in comparison to what they were on the original Enterprise. And I thought I saw up here. I mean, here. So this is somebody else's reimagined look to the original Enterprise, which is fairly close, seeing that that's supposed to be the Enterprise. This is the Discovery. Look how long the nacelles are, and that's only one warp core in there, or warp, not quite warp core, but warp coil. Doing all of this just with one, compares to later on when we had multiples. Um, and now looking at a newer version, somebody had thrown out a not the Galaxy, but it was the Voss class or something. My mind's drawn a little bit of a blank. Someone else had reimagined what that was and taken the Galaxy class here, seeing if we have 24 um, warp coils, not cores, but warp coils or whatever, in order to get us. Uh, they also had them going around the saucer section up here. So in that regards, that changes things. So when this actually separates, and I believe it was the Voss class, which is a newer variant of what the old Galaxy class was. You could take the saucer section to warp, um, so you weren't limited to just impulse power. We could grab ships from any other imagination that we can come up with. Um, if we're playing in that era. If we're playing in an older era or whatever, we'd have to get a little bit more creative. Remember, ships are going to be kind of smaller. They're going to be fairly expensive. You could start yourself off as a small little freighter captain or something. If you wanted to do, something to go against the Klingons or whatever. So, like I said, this is just ideas, me just kind of ranting here. Um, I mean, I love the iconic look of Star Trek ships, but sometimes, I like having small ships, so it's a small crew. This is where I always ran into problems, and I know I've said this before. When we look at Star Trek, we have big ships, big crews, and all that. When we look at Star Wars as a role playing game, it's always a small ship, a small crew. The Millennium Falcon, you can have two to maybe 10 people on there or whatever. It's a small ship, small crew. We're all part of the action. Um, Kind of deal, uh, which is what I really love. I really love having that small group, so everybody's a integral part of what's going on. Um, Deep Space Nine, when you really look at it, it's just a small group of key people here that are taking care of the space station, and they laid it out, and they kind of really mentioned that when you look at Deep Space Nine, which I've just picked up again, and I'm starting to rewatch because I really want to get into different ideas of things here. Um, when you kind of look at it in those regards, um, we we have things laid out like the old western towns. You know, there's the sheriff's stations. Here's this shop. The Quarks is the main bar kind of hub of things. Um, so as we look at it in a smaller sense, not the big grand scale, keeping things kind of small and compact, small crews. Because really, you look at you have Cisco and Kira who are in command, so that'd be essentially Cisco's the mayor and Kira's the assistant mayor. Um, Odo's your chief of security, so he's the marshal. You know, O'Brien, he's there because you need someone to work on the station. Um, then you have your doctor, and then you have your lead scientist because we're out in space. So really, you're talking about six people. And of course, you get Nog thrown in there and the kids, and which all become a little bit other pieces to throw in there as reoccurring themes of what's going on with other people. We'd have, well, some of the ranch hands, there's Joe and he's getting into trouble because he can't get the horses in, or whatever the case was for a Western. How do we bring that into like a Star Trek, which was really what, at the time when Star Trek originally came out, everyone was watching Westerns. So in the original pilot, they wanted to use more guns and stuff like that, but that didn't fly because everyone's used to the Western. So it's Awaken Train to the Stars. That's really what it was. How do we take that into keeping that very same sense of feel and bring that else out where, if you want a little grittier, but it's still that Wagon Train. If you're part of another planet that's sending out their own people, you're a freelancer or whatever, in the underbellies of some of the other things that are going on. That the Federation is a big organization as you're trying to get peace and take care of other bigger things you're doing on the smaller side. Um, or maybe you're a small ship taking care of the underbelly icky stuff, trying to, the Enterprise has come through. Now you've got to go through, and this is where like the lower decks, they're always cleaning things up. They're always getting into messes. They do second contacts. Maybe you're doing a second, a third contact, stuff like that. A small crude ship that you're getting, elbow deep into the muck and the grime of things. Um, and because I like the Next Generation, I really do enjoy like Deep Space Nine, especially once we get into the Dominion Wars. Um, Maybe you're a small crew that's trying to take care of other things, and then you get pulled into some of the combat from time to time. Um, One of the thoughts I really want to bring out here is if you're creating a ship off the website that Modifius has, you're creating that in 2371, and my mind's going to be a little off here because I want to say it's 2 or 3 years, so it's either 73 or 74. I want to say it's 73. In 2373, that's when the Dominion Wars starts. So that gives you the ability to make any ship that could be now running around or established right before the Dominion War. So if you wanted to start your crew off and going into the Dominion War, you could do that. The ships are already there and all ready to go. Now, my complaints about this. We do have a list of ships, and a lot of these are older ships. So if you want to use these as a civilian entity and just crew it with like 5 people, say it's more automated, more whatever, go for it. You're not going to be as efficient combat wise and stuff like that, but you're trying your best with an old dilapidated ship. I could see some of these old ships being sent off to other planets to help them protect their own interests and stuff like that. And this is the same things I talk about in like Star Wars. You keep your old ships instead of just completely tearing them down for planetary defense and stuff like that as well. Especially with the Borg being out there, maybe some planets want to have a couple of ships handy so that way they can kind of protect themselves from the Borg, or maybe do other humanitarian efforts or whatever the case may be. Maybe they're not the best combat ships, but it's the best they can get. So I would say if you're doing a ship that's for civilians, take an older ship. Um, Whatever that ship would be, make it into something else. I'd love to see some of the other ships that we've seen in, like the Decipher or was it Last Unicorn games, Lug. Um, Maybe some of the ships that they had come up with. And I'd love to see Modifius bring them into their game. Give us some extra sense of feel, stuff like that. They gave us the Plantation Utopia, which is great for creating ships. You can create whatever you want. Use that as a guideline to come up with something. Um, you see me kind of struggling here because I'm trying to come up with different games and try and play games, and I don't have all the time in the world for all my hobbies. So one thing always has to get shoved off to make time for another. Um, and unfortunately, I love doing the Legos. I'd like to have a ship out of Legos for a Star Trek, and maybe that's what I might do. I might just take one of my ships and say this is a Starfleet ship, and we'll come up with a map or something of it. Um, there's nothing to say. We can't create a universe of our own that's got some of this extra stuff in here. Um, there's plenty of times I'd love to take everything and mush it all together for all my silly wonderful science fiction interests and mush them all together and create something which what we might just try and do. I don't know what system I would do it with, whether I stay with a Modifius or dungeon the D20 or a D6 or whatever. We'll figure something out, but um, that's my rant for the day. Really, just kind of going off with that. I'd really love to see more civilian ships being brought out as a something, um, even if it's just a civilian raider to throw out there, whatever. I think those would be wonderful ideas to come up with. I think if I can get the time, maybe what I'll try and do is I'll try and come up with some, and I'll put it up, kind of like I made uh, another version of the Saber class because it's only got a crew of 40 people. There was another one called the Merst class, and it had a crew of 30 people, but it looked a lot closer to the original Enterprise. So, um, kind of like it was like a miniature version of the Excelsior. I think it did have 10 decks or whatever on it, but they said it only had a crew of 30, but it could hold up to, I think, like 100 or something for emergencies or whatever if you're using it as a transport or something like that. But it's still a general ship like you would find for the Federation. We can have our science and tactical and whatever else, but it's got a small actual crew. Um, I know the old berth has been used for so many years because it was an old model that they had, and I know I just seen it in here. Um, to take the Oberth, I've seen many different variants of the Oberth. Where here we are. Um, essentially we have the whole bottom taken away, so it's just a small little cutter. Um, Maybe they throw a roll bar on top or something like that, and it's got a photon torpedo launcher that way. Otherwise, all it really has is just a couple of phaser banks, and that's about it. Some different ideas. Um, that's what I enjoy to do. I love the create stuff. I like the creation games. I love doing that stuff. Even I just started doing a little bit of Stardew Valley again because you can kind of do a little mining, a little bit of farming, and a little bit of that stuff. Here's the old Excelsior NCC. Yep, 2000 up there. So Immersed was kind of similar to that. Actually, I'll tell you what. Let's just let's see if we can find it here. RC. Um, Seeing that I'm kind of going through all this here. So here is an Excelsior. This would be the Enterprise variant because it's got the extra parts on the side. This is immersed right here. There's an old berth in the background. So here we have immersed, which looks quite a bit like a small Excelsior, uh, but it's a small ship, 30 crew. I think they say 10 decks. Um, you know, Gives you ideas. Gives Here we are. There's another layout of it. So your door could roll up here or something. Like I said, I enjoy having small ships because with small ships you can have a small crew, and you can just go from there. I think that's another reason why, in watching Deep Space Nine, and I kind of forgot about it. Here we have a Miranda class, which they would have had a very small crew on it in the Deep Space Nine because now they had families on there. So a ship that may have had 400 might only have a crew of 100. Because if we're only having a crew of 100 and we have families, we need that extra room. So, all right. Well, I think that's going to end it for today. This is where we're going to end. Like I said, it's just different ideas, things to throw out, you know, trying to have fun with, um, just trying to lead things in the different directions. Um, Remember, if it's your game, you use whatever head canon you want to use to make it whatever you want to do it. Make it your own alternate timeline and have fun. And that's where I'm kind of coming from. Maybe I'll throw different ideas and all that in, and we'll try and keep things going as we go. But as always, thanks for visiting. I really enjoy it. We'll see you in the next video.